We talk a lot about reaching Gen Z, but most brands are trying to reach them the same way they reached everyone else. Build an ad, find an audience, then push a message. The problem is Gen Z doesn't sit back and receive culture. They are inside it. They are playing, creating, building communities around the games that they love. And those communities have real identity attached to them. Today I'm sitting down with Ringo Lung from Moonton, the team behind Mobile Legends Bang Bang, one of the biggest games in the entire world. Ringo works on the brand partnership side, which means that every day he sees what brands get right and what brands get wrong when they try to show up in that world. This conversation is for any CMO who's been asked, should we be in gaming? And wasn't sure where to start. Hi Ringo, happy to interview you in our Mana Partners Culture Series. You have a lot of experience in the gaming industry, especially in esports. Take us through your experience, your story behind esports, and how did you get into it? Just like a bit of introduction for everyone watching.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Currently, I am working at a company game publisher called Moonton. So we develop many different game titles, but our most popular one is a mobile MOBA game called Mobile Legends Bang Bang, which is currently the most watched mobile esport in the world, which is amazing. I've been here for the past couple of years. Prior to that, I was working in partnerships for a esports team based out of APAC. But really where I came from was in traditional sports. So before joining in this crazy world of gaming and esports, I was in FC Barcelona and sort of doing partnerships in the APAC region, in Southeast Asia in particular. So I've come from really a traditional sports background. Growing up, I think football was always, a big love of mine. Played a bit of rugby as well. But yeah, and then now into sort of gaming and esports. So yeah, happy to be here again.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure to have you on. And I think it's very interesting to see like someone coming from like traditional sports into gaming and esports. I feel like it's always like it comes the other way around where like people start from gaming and then they go into esports. I think you bring I would say like a different perspective, especially like coming like from literally traditional sports to esports.
Right.
Do you see any like similarities? Like obviously like there are some similarities, but like what are the things that you feel like are extremely similar between traditional sports and esports, and what are like the major differences that you say like similarities versus differences?
Yeah, good question. I haven't necessarily thought about this question in a while, but I think ultimately fans are fans, if that makes sense. I mean, fandom is the same. So sort of when I first joined esports, I was really surprised about this just the passion within the fandom actually. So, for example, when I first joined MLBB, I think the first event I came to was a local Malaysia league called MPL Malaysia, and I went there, and it was like a stadium. It was maybe a couple thousand people, but on both sides there was drums, tifos, flags. That felt very familiar to me, and I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And so I think the fandom is I think kind of universal when you care about something, right? As an individual, when you're bought into something and you demonstrate that passion in certain ways, that is very similar. Having said that, I think there are obviously huge tons amounts of differences as well. The way that sort of gamers interact with a game or an esports property it can be very different from a traditional sports fan. So yeah, definitely a lot of the emotional level, like the human level, a lot of similarities from even to professional players, coming from difficult backgrounds and then finding a pathway to support their family, to uplift themselves through this kind of special talent and passion that they have. That human level is very similar, but in terms of the fan engagement, the way we kind of speak to our fans, I would say is pretty different, as well as just kind of the way the industry operates is very different as well in terms of where the revenue is coming from, commercial models. So it was I guess a lot to learn when I came into sort of gaming and esports. But again, that through line of having fans, being passionate about something, and kind of bringing value to those fans through partnerships that has sort of been consistent.
Yes, yeah, that actually sounds very very interesting, because I feel like when I obviously, like, I would say like I was born watching football as well, and but I was also a gamer like since I was like 5 or something. So
Yeah.
like I always saw like how like the passion is very similar from like a fandom perspective. But I feel like even like the passion in Asia, I feel like it's like on a different level. Like I feel like it's maybe different than other regions as well. So so I guess like you were lucky enough to like witness that in real life as well.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? It's funny you mentioned kind of growing up. You were both right. I have a nephew who is maybe, what is he? He's like 13 now,
Mm.
and when I was sort of 7, 8, 9 years old growing up, all I would do at lunchtime after school, I would just be playing football. You know, just jumpers as posts in a park somewhere, getting really muddy. And that was my entry into football. It was just, you know, like physically playing.
Mm.
But my nephew, when he was a similar age, his entry into football was actually through FIFA, or through, you know, EA, what's now known as EA.
Yeah.
And but he's kind of through this, he got really into football, and then now he's, you know, he's got a club of his own. He's going to training twice a week. He's playing
Wow.
every
So
week.
it's like it was the other way around kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's yeah, exactly. He's like the opposite of me. He went through gaming first and then found traditional sports. So yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately doesn't matter your route in, as long as you're enjoying something. That's always what matters. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. From your experience in Moonton, how has Moonton thought about the relationship between its games and the communities that have grown around them? And what has that journey looked like? Obviously, like I know that you came in, like I would say, mid that journey. So, like, what was that like before you arrived, and like through your like the current position that you're in as well?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think obviously different games will have at different points in their sort of life cycles. They'll have, you know, different strategies, how they're pushing the game, how they're bringing you know, players back, retention. There's not really one size fits all. I would say, obviously, starting maybe at the end almost. You know, right now, as of today, I think we're very fortunate at Moonton with MLBB that we have reached a scale where our user base is pretty big. I mean, 1.5 billion downloads globally. Our MAU is over 110 million. So really big scale. Having said that, I think ultimately the user experience is really paramount. Everything we do is to answer this kind of user experience question. There's two factors really. I mean, number one, we are a 10-year-old game already. This is our 10th anniversary. And secondly, we're free to play, which means that in order for us to exist, we really rely on players coming back, and we're relying on in-game spend. So what that means for us is that we have to make sure we're really giving fans a real reason to be coming back to us and playing. And so ultimately it's about, what do fans want? What's going to engage them? That kind of is the consistent thing. But in terms of what we, you know, do, I think every few months, I guess like a lot of game titles that have lasted this long, we need to have constant new content. You know, so every few months we've got new updates. Whether that's like a new map, a new hero. We do a lot with third-party IPs. Our most recent ones being Naruto and SpongeBob, but in the past we've done, you know, Star Wars, Attack on Titan. So we're constantly obviously looking at what's the type of content that are going to bring people back. That's number one. Number two, we've really historically been big in APAC. Our core markets are in the APAC region and Southeast Asia. A big part of our growth early on was localization, is to make sure that we have a really strong ability to reach a local audience and more importantly communicate with them. You know, as I'm sure you'll you'll know, everyone knows that's working in this region. It's such a large region and it's so diverse and it's so fragmented. It's really important that even if, as and when, of course, we have kind of global content, global campaigns, but how we're communicating that will differ from market to market. So that has been super important. I think it will continue to be so. The big change, I would say, maybe from since I've been here till today is I mentioned that APAC has historically been our core markets, but increasingly what we're seeing is pretty strong growth in mobile first markets elsewhere outside of the APAC region. So, for example, in MENA and Eastern Europe and LATAM, our M8 World Championships, which is our flagship esports event, and that will for the first time be happening out of Southeast Asia in Istanbul in Turkey in January next year. So I think that's a good pointer towards the global growth of MLBB. So that's definitely something kind of as I've been here and that I'm seeing a lot more of. So changes, yes, in terms of the way we as a business operate and how we engage with our fans, but ultimately the game, it's a social game. You're playing with your friends, obviously you're competing, but a big motivator is playing together as part of a social group in your community. I think when I first joined, I went to Manila in the Philippines, and I was in a city center, in like a park in the city center, and it was a lunchtime. And there was a group of 5 people. Some of them were in kind of shirts, some of them a bit more casual dressed, but they're all together playing MLBB.
Wow, yeah.
And it's similar. I live in Malaysia, and there's a type of restaurant called a mamak here. It's like a diner, and that's where typically people will go, after dinner hours to hang out with their friends. And again, that's also like a bit of the culture where people are kind of friends is just gathering there, playing MLBB together. So whilst, yes, we're constantly, releasing new things, we're kind of growing, geographically expanding. But what's, I think, ultimately really important is that we're continuing to nurture and foster that sort of community element, getting people to come play together. So yeah, a lot of changes, but there's also just some things which have been true to us since day one that I don't think will be, stopping anytime soon.
When Moonton decided to do the M8 in Istanbul, how did you guys take that decision through weighing in maybe the disadvantage of people from Asia that would be maybe disappointed or sad that it's not on their side of the world? How did you guys go through that decision? Tell me more about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I think it's called M8 because this is the 8th edition of the World Championships. So we've had 7 World Championships before this, right? All 7 of those have been in some form cycling through our core markets in Southeast Asia. So Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, and then Singapore a couple of times during COVID. But these 4 markets historically have been kind of our strongest markets. But we've almost reached a level where in Southeast Asia, I think we're happy to say that we are the most watched esport. Regardless of platform, we are the most watched esport in many of these markets already. So we've almost hit a ceiling in terms of esport and gaming, number one. One way to break through that is compete at a level where we're not just seen as a game or esport, but we're really seen as an entertainment option. So that was something that during M7 we really focused on. M7 was in Indonesia just this past January. So that's one way of kind of breaking through in terms of our next phase of growth is competing against traditional sports, against music, against Netflix and movie. That's the arena that we want to play at because we know that we have reached a certain level within gaming specifically already. We did that through different ways, through kind of music campaigns. We had different events that happened as part of our M7 tournament, like the opening ceremony, which took place in a city, kind of a city location. fireworks, performances, all this sort of stuff. There's kind of all these tactics to do that. But the ultimate thinking was, okay, one way we can break through is compete at this on this sort of arena as an entertainment product. The other way then, of course, to grow the product is geographically, and ultimately for us, even though I work in the esports team, ultimately we are a game company, and of course esports is a great way to engage a fan base, to grow a fan base, and get people playing the game. So another way to kind of grow our event is to go through different markets. I think also from a fan perspective, if I know that every 2 or 3 years the event is coming back to my country, it almost loses that kind of special feeling. So thinking long term, number one, yes, we need to serve an increasingly global audience, and esports is a great way to also help grow that audience. But also number two, for our existing users, we want to have that sense of you really are, when you're competing on a global stage, it's a global stage that you're competing on, and it's not something that's going to be super close to you anymore. It kind of always has to have that feeling of being a bit far away to make it a bit more premium, to elevate it a little bit more. So that's kind of the thinking behind it, and why Turkey. Actually, M8 will be split between the first stage of the tournament will be in Thailand, and then the second stage of the tournament will be in Turkey. And the reason why is because these are kind of at the sweet spot of markets where we have seen a lot of growth in the past 12 to 24 months. These are the markets where we've seen a lot of growth, and there's still potential to go. There is kind of already some esports gaming infrastructure to a certain degree there. We also have kind of resources there, so it's a bit of a melting pot of different factors. But yeah, it's ultimately determined by the game's growth potential, I guess.
Making it feel global, I think it's also inviting for people from that region as well. It's something that like the brands are also like tapping into us like in a more genuine way as well. I agree with you 100%. And it also makes it special for the other people as well. Like if they want to travel to, like it gives them a reason to travel as well. If they want to go, CMOs are increasingly investing in gaming spaces. Can you give us insight to how the best brand partners approach this, how they identify the right opportunities, and how they measure impact?
Yes. It's a really big question. So I can go through the different levels if I was the CMO approaching it, right? Like, I think first and foremost, gaming is such a broad category. It's just like saying, sports, right? It's such a broad catch-all term. Different games, again, different regions that have very different user profiles. My mum's playing Candy Crush. She's like 60, 70 plus. She's in the UK. She's playing Candy Crush. She's technically defined as a gamer, but she'll look very different to someone playing CS:GO in the US, and then someone playing League in South Korea, and someone playing MLBB in Philippines, right? All these profiles will be super different. So I think the first thing is finding obviously like a platform and an IP that will really cut through to your target audience. I think that's the kind of very natural sort of first step. I think secondly, understanding how these players are actually interacting with the game. So it's one thing that I am playing Mobile Legends on my phone, but am I also watching streamers on YouTube? Am I watching shorts on TikTok? Am I playing at lunchtime with my friends, like I just mentioned before? Am I going to esports tournaments? It's a whole sort of ecosystem out there. So within that game itself, there's all these kind of different touch points that you have with a fan of a particular game. So I think it's really important that's where they are. But in terms of how they're interacting with the game, it's important to understand that. And then thirdly, actually as a brand, having something to say that is going to be sort of meaningful and contribute to that fandom and that fan culture is important. I think if I was thinking more from a marketer's perspective, it's more complex than ever to be a marketing person, right? It's not quite Mad Men anymore, where you just just some creative, stick it on the TV or stick it on a poster somewhere, and then you're done. And obviously there's huge fragmentation of tension. There's just multiple channels, multiple screens, multiple screens at the same time. I'm scrolling TikTok as I'm watching Netflix, and everything's social first, everything's digital first. It's easier than ever to reach someone, but it's really hard to actually get their attention. What I'm seeing a lot of how marketers are speaking right now is that the way to overcome it is making sure that your brand is saying something really relevant to the people you're trying to reach. That's how you can cut through the noise. And so, I think thankfully, at least for MLBB Esports, we have a super sort of attentive fan base who are engaging with us through all these multiple touch points. They're playing the game, they're watching the broadcast, they're watching social content, they're going to our on-ground events. So we have their attention, and then of course with that fandom comes the emotional investment, right? A 30-second YouTube ad is very different to your favorite esports team, celebrating with a Red Bull can in their hand after an important match, or a brand that's able to provide access to an event or to an experience that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Those are kind of the little moments of joy, and that brands can access that a media buy can't. And thankfully we have that, but we also have it at scale. So it really becomes a question of how do I contribute to this sort of fandom. I think if I maybe put some examples to that, for N7 in Jakarta, we worked with a range of different brands. The most easy one to sort of picture would be Realme. We're a mobile game, Realme a mobile phone, so it's a very natural sort of fit. The product proposition is very clear. The best players in the world are using Realme phones to achieve these sort of crazy feats. It's like a very clear proposition in terms of how I communicate with my fandom. But we also worked with Visa. They want to be an enabler of passion points. So Visa is all about unlocking kind of rewards and experience and benefits that you otherwise as a fan I can't get. What was really cool, we actually created with Visa our first ever Mythic VIP experience, which was basically during our sort of finals weekend. We brought over 200 fans. They had the best seats in the house. They had a backstage tour. They got to meet the teams on the actual stage itself. It's like, before a World Cup final meeting. When was the last World Cup final? It was Argentina, right? So it's like going to meet Messi on the World Cup
that's sick.
pitch before they're competing. So that was something we co-created with them, with the specific purpose of, Visa is unlocking these, giving this value to fans that we have literally never had before, being able to give to fans. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we've been working a couple of years with a startup jewelry brand called Fairy. And your first thought is, what has jewelry got to do with esports? That's probably the most surprising for a lot of people. But what they really recognized was that gamers spend a lot of time and potentially money building their in-game identities. It means a lot to gamers, right? So whether it's achievements or whether it's cosmetic, it's skins. I grew up playing RPGs, like a Dragon Age or like a Knights of Old Republic. I spent so much time just building on the character creation page.
Yes, the customization, just customizing how you look and like how like everything is. Yeah, it's like
Exactly that.
it takes probably more time than actually playing.
Yeah, right. Just adjusting your slider by 2 points this way, 2 points. Yeah, it spent so much time, and that's what Fairy as a brand they understood. But the challenge was, how do gamers actually translate that into a real world setting, into an offline setting. So they created a brand to do that through jewelry. So they created jewelry sets, different types of jewelry sets. Some of them were more aligned to like a game character. Some of them were inspired by your rank within MLBB. So yeah, they basically created a whole different set of jewelry, and I think they're a great example of actually having like a position. I mean, they're a bit extreme in that they created the whole purpose of their brand was for gaming, but it's a great example of how I can show up for a particular fandom and particular sort of game community. Well, and then the last part of that was the measurement, right? That's always like the golden question, right? So obviously for us, we have our own partnership metrics. We work with a third party analytics provider called Chikenzo to provide us with brands, media value, impressions. We actually just released a case study recently. We generated over 180 million USD in media value for our brand partners for our M7 World Championships, which is great. But of course, what really matters is that media value, that level of impressions. How does that then translate into my business metrics, right? And so with that ultimately is a brand side metric, so it's a bit harder for us to get direct access to that. But what we can do is sort of pre-agree with our brand partners ahead of time, what exactly it is that we're trying to achieve here. Okay, there's one thing is that we're providing you with reach and impressions, and great, but what's the actual action that we're looking to drive? And so, for example, with Realme, yes, they really wanted to have kind of generate top line awareness. It's a platform for them to tell a very strong sort of product story. But what they were really interested in was actually the search moment, as in fans going to a Google and searching for Realme, 15 Pro or whatever, because that's ultimately where a fan's interest becomes from passive, in that I am just being served, ads or whatever endorsements to, oh, I am actually interested to take time and to action upon this interest. So that was a really important moment that we wanted to focus on, how we actually going to drive traffic and drive search volume for Realme, because that ultimately signals intent. And once you have intent, then Realme can bring them into their own sort of ecosystem and their own channels. And so all that's to say is, yes, of course, we have our own metrics, but ultimately it really depends on what the brand is trying to achieve, and how we measure that is really a joint effort between both parties.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think all of the examples that you've provided are very insightful, and like I feel like it's all, as you said, like the brand looking to not only like get, but also contribute to the community, the gaming community that like they're tapping into. In this example is MLBB. As a gamer as well, like I would definitely agree with what you say. Like I feel like when a brand goes into a game and doesn't really contribute or like give us any reason to participate, it's kind of like meaningless. What is the opportunity you most want brands to understand about reaching this generation?
Yeah, that's such a good question, actually. When I joined gaming in sort of 2020, towards the end of 2020, that was obviously during COVID, and that was when a lot of brands were starting to invest in gaming, or they were kind of really on the upward curve in terms of brand involvement of gaming. So I think we went through a phase of, and because COVID, there is maybe lack of other options, and everyone's just online, it's digital, and so a lot of brands, it felt like during that phase, did a lot in gaming, but a lot of it was very sort of tactical, like one-off or single campaign driven. To do it for maybe a few months. Yeah, we did something in gaming, cool. There's a lot of experimentation as well. But ultimately, I think that served a purpose in terms of like, okay, I've touched base here, but does that really drive long-term value for a brand partner? Probably not. If it doesn't really build that stickiness and you don't really maximize your value with that approach. And we still see brands coming in and maybe just want to do something for like a few months, which is not really something I think ultimately works, not just for us, but ultimately for the fans, right? They don't want to be felt like they're just being sold to for a few months for like a new product launch or whatever, the new flavored drink that you're launching. Gaming at the end of the day, it's a daily or like a weekly ritual, right? And it's it's a community, as we kind of mentioned before, and it's a big scale. Gamers choose to be playing. It's not like I am just trying to watch something else and then an ad pops up. Like I choose to go open up MLBB and play 20 minutes, play an hour with my friends. It's really an active participation. It's not just a fleeting moment. So I think brands need to treat it as such, to understand kind of the importance of when they're activating within gaming. Again, back to this, what value am I really bringing here to this end user? Because it isn't just like a media channel, it isn't just like a media buy, it's a culture, it's an ecosystem in of itself. And in order to kind of cut through the noise and to really stick, you need to add value. Otherwise you are just another ad, and ads reach is so commoditized now. It's anyone can get a reach, you just pay for it, right? But to get attention, that's a really hard part, and that's where you really need to get value. So and I think what we see at least as well, like with our fan base, and our fan base is not going to respond well. And the other thing about gamers is they will let you know if you're not if they feel like they're being sold to, right? I mean, there was I guess a very big beverage brand that did a global gaming campaign, a commercial, which high production quality value, surface level looked amazing, and non-gamers would look at that and go, wow, it's this big brand, doing like a gaming campaign, very cool. But gamers looking at that will immediately see that, yeah, this is nothing like any sort of game that I know or gaming culture that I know, and I would never do that in that moment. That doesn't speak to me. And the fans were not shy to let their voices known. They're very used to kind of online discourse, and they can come back at you. So it's super important that you are not sort of just coming in and trying to do a little bit, because it's very easy to see through.
That's it for the interview. Thank you for your time and all of the insightful answers that you've gone through. You really provided a lot of the details on gaming cultures, how brands can actually think through how they go through a briefing, or when they think of different games or different they have to think of it as different cultures. And I feel I learned a lot personally, and I feel it also, as a gamer, I feel it resonated a lot with when you spoke on behalf of us. I feel it actually it actually resonated a lot. So yes, I think you're spot on. So thank you so much for coming for the interview.
No worries, thanks for having me.